Welcome back to Rambling with Ryan, where we have three roughly 5-minute segments of different topics, all adding up to around 50 minutes, three separate topics. And today we're going to shift our focus to basketball. I'm here with my dad once again. And obviously, other than, of course, the playoffs, which we'll get into later, the NBA draft, which different to other drafts, it's a lottery system, so it's not that the worst record gets the number one overall pick overall. It's that they lottery, so like let's say a team with the fifth best record could get the number one overall pick. And what was interesting was that the Dallas Mavericks got the number one pick, and the reason that got so much attention was not only did they have only a 1.8% chance, but also there was a lot of controversy, obviously, surrounding the team with what they did with, trading with the Lakers, the huge Luka trade. So obviously, you're not as into basketball as you are football, but just, what are your just overall, reactions to that? Because obviously, number one overall pick means you get Cooper Flag, which is kind of, I don't want to say as hyped up as Wemby was, but he's definitely, hyped up to be this great player that would instantly make a team better.
I think just Mavericks got super lucky, probably especially for the GM. And then, I think that is gonna just save his job for sure.
His job basically.
And maybe save him a lot of headache, and just maybe once again people just stop hating him for a while. Because now people are hopeful again, and honestly if their draft goes well, it's not a bust, and then having him alongside Kyrie and AD, and others, and with their coach and stuff, they could really have a really good team, and they could be a contender in the Western Conference.
Oh yeah, and
so you gotta remember that with only Luka and Kyrie, they went all the way to the NBA Finals.
Exactly, yeah. Not much around them.
Of course, that guy is not gonna be Luka right off the bat, but he is a guy that a lot of teams were hoping to get, right? So now all of a sudden, with just 1.8%, you end up getting possibly future superstar, and put him next to Kyrie and AD. Honestly, Mavs fans, they're gonna have an exciting season.
Exactly, yeah, and I really think all they need to do is to make sure, because Cooper Flag is one of those players that, you don't really have to develop. Obviously, you can develop him into becoming better, but he's one of those players that once you draft him, same thing with Wemby, he can make an instant impact to a team. So I think all they have to do is that Cooper Flag and AD need to keep the ship afloat until Kyrie returns from his ACL injury in January. And then after that, Mavericks have a real shot to win the title. And then what I thought was interesting, that I don't know if you knew that, but a lot of the thing around the media, kind of a funny thing about it, was people were genuinely convinced that the lottery is rigged, and that, let's say, Adam Silver, the commissioner, went to Nico Harrison, the Dallas GM, before the season, and said, hey, if you send Luka to LA, we'll give you the number one overall pick in Cooper Flag. So
I didn't think it was rigged, but honestly,
do you believe in
what
that?
Are the odds? No, I don't believe in that. But as soon as I heard that, I'm like, what are the odds?
I know.
Honestly, if there is only one team or GM that really, really needed this more than any other team in the league, that was Mavs and their GM.
Oh yeah.
Nobody could have just. It just happened, I guess, to the team that needed that the most.
Yeah, and there was actually a video. There was a video of the Mavericks, front office when the lottery was announced that they got the number one overall pick, and you could see Nico Harrison, the GM, getting up, smiling, he's really happy. And what I thought was funny is, to your point, I think he was not really so much smiling over the fact that he can add Cooper Flag to his team, but more smiling over the fact that I get to keep my job.
Yeah, he must have gone to church every Sunday
Yeah.
since Lucas trade.
Praying
Just
that.
God honestly answered his prayers.
I know. Yeah. Cause and especially like until Kyrie came back in January, AD really needed someone to help him shoulder the load to keep the boat afloat until January, and I think he got his guy to do so.
And January is only like 2.5 months after the start of the season.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be probably like 20-30 games.
Yes.
Something. So still for a really good chunk of the regular season, they're gonna have their superstars.
Yeah, they're full
next to each
team.
other, yeah.
Exactly. And even if they go 15-15, that is not too big of a hole to climb out
They
of.
just need to make the playoffs. Honestly.
Yeah.
We know with even a play-in spot could honestly give you a chance to go all the way and win the title.
Exactly.
I don't think the Mavs are gonna just win the title right off the bat, but all I'm saying is these three players together, if they click, they could they could compete basically.
Yeah.
There is a still you gotta still you have OKC, you have Denver, you're gonna have a much better Laker next year with a better center.
Exactly.
And all that, and Clippers, and they're all really, really good teams to worry about. I mean, don't forget about Warriors.
Yeah.
And Minnesota is not going anywhere.
Yeah.
And it's just there is a lot of good teams, so they can just come and win the title. But without him, without the number one pick, honestly, Mavs would have had a hard time. Finishing in top 6. Maybe they would have gone to play in or something like that. But now with this guy, honestly, they have a chance to, make some noise basically.
Exactly. And I also think it brings morale up too.
Absolutely.
Imagine Mavs fans were just feeling so hurt by that Luka trade that gaining the number one overall pick and expecting Cooper Flag kind of gets the morale back. And I think Mavs fans, rather than dreading the season, oh, look at us going into a season without Luka, they're actually a sense of excitement about it. Hopeful that they'll make the playoffs. Yeah. And speaking of the playoffs, obviously the playoffs are going on right now. And after today's Game 7, there are only 4 teams left. On the West, we have Oklahoma City Thunder and Minnesota Timberwolves. And on the East, we have Indiana Pacers and the New York Knicks. So, what are your thoughts about the playoffs so far? And any predictions for the conference finals?
Based on what I have seen, honestly, I think OKC should have an easy route to championship, to the championship if no one is hurt.
Oh, yeah.
It is going to be similar to Boston last year.
Yeah.
Boston pretty much beating everybody pretty easily. Yes, OKC, they have not been able to beat everybody that easy. I mean, they just went to Game 7 with Denver.
Yeah.
But honestly, they should not have a hard time beating Minnesota. And regardless of who makes the NBA Finals from the Eastern Conference, I don't think OKC would have a hard time beating either of those teams. You gotta keep in mind that doesn't really matter what happens from this point on. I mean, OKC from the very beginning and continues to the same thing from this point on. They're gonna have the home court advantage.
Yeah, no matter what.
Yeah, and we know that they play pretty well at home. Look at just what they did to Denver today. At Game 7.
Yeah. Blew them out,
team
by the way.
is not an experienced team, right? A bunch of young dudes, very ambitious, they truly are a team.
Youngest team in the playoffs.
Yeah, and then honestly performing to that level in Game 7 versus Joker and Murray and all those guys was not an easy task.
Oh yeah, that's not easy.
Really, I mean, showed up.
Yeah, there's a lot of pressure, and overall, I'm really impressed with that. Especially because last year they kind of choked versus the Mavericks. Everyone knew they were a better team and that they should have won. Which is why I wanted to ask, because this is, at least in my opinion, I genuinely think that if they don't win the championship this year, I really think this season is a failure. Do you think so too?
I really, really think so.
If they don't win
the regular season, how that went, and they won the conference, championship a month or two before, like, the end of the regular season, I think if they don't win it, it's gonna be a failure.
Yeah, I think so. I think anything but an NBA championship win is a failure for this team.
Unless God
Unless
forbid there is a
injuries.
big injury, then that's a different story. But
Yeah.
if like everybody is healthy, I think these guys, I would be extremely surprised if these guys do not win it.
Oh,
What
yeah.
are your thoughts, though? Do you think that they also have the highest chance, or?
No, I think they have. I think they have a chance. I mean, on the betting apps, they literally only they literally have more than a 50% chance to win the thing, and I think so too. Theoretically, like obviously it would make for like a pretty boring finals to have OKC win, but theoretically they are the best team. They already were the best team in the league on paper, and now they're the best team of the Final Four by a long shot, in my opinion. They theoretically, I think Minnesota will give them a hard time. I think Minnesota will take them to 6 or 7, but like OKC Thunder are clearly the best team, and if they don't walk away with the title, I think it's a failure. I mean, they were a 65-win team. Like, not many. I think people are forgetting that that's among some of the greatest teams of all time. Like, to win that many games in the regular season and to have the statistical offensive and defensive season that they did is pretty overlooked, and they're a super team.
So I have 2 points. Like, first, I really think OKC will finish Minnesota in 5 and will finish the Eastern team in 6. That's my prediction. Of course, we'll have a conversation after the NBA finals and see how. I'm gonna ask for your prediction as well. And the second thing is, I think regardless of which team makes the finals from the Eastern side, I think that's gonna be a great NBA final, because both cities, let's say it is Oklahoma versus New York or Oklahoma versus Indiana, Indianapolis. I mean that final is gonna be like crazy, because both cities, they're gonna want it so bad.
Oh yeah.
New York has not won it for 30 years.
Yeah.
Indiana,
longer,
I think
maybe.
they have never won it.
Yeah.
Oklahoma City, I don't think they have ever won it.
I don't think so.
So
Minnesota obviously has never won it.
Yeah, so I'm assuming that OKC will go to the finals.
Oh
right?
yeah,
so regardless of which team goes to the final from the Eastern side, I think it's gonna be one of the craziest NBA finals, as far as from the fans' perspective.
Exactly.
It's gonna remind me of how Toronto was, in the NBA finals a few years ago, when every single game, the entire downtown, Toronto was full of people. It was just insane, because the entire city was with the team. They just sent so much energy, honestly, and the team really performed.
Yeah.
And I think NBA final this year, regardless, even if Minnesota goes there, it's gonna be the same thing. I think this is gonna be one of the craziest, because, for example, you don't expect Boston or LA fans, right, to be that crazy about the NBA finals, right? They have won it so many times.
Oh
of
yeah.
course they're excited, but they're not gonna just show up and fill the entire downtown LA with hundreds of thousands of people.
Yeah,
that's what you would expect in New York, in Indy, Minnesota, or Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
So that's gonna be interesting. So, but yeah, I think they finish Minnesota in 5. Finish New York or Indy in 6. What are your thoughts?
Yeah,
I don't think you are as optimistic as I am.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously theoretically they should do that theoretically, but I do think that if they beat Minnesota, I think it will be in 6 or 7. But I ultimately think that at some point, whether it's in the finals or even the conference finals, I do think Oklahoma City will choke. I don't know. There's something in me. There's something in me. I don't see them going winning it all. You know what I mean? I just, in my head, I don't see it.
Honestly, I thought if there was only one team that could force OKC to choke, was Denver. Because these guys were super experienced. They had won a championship. They were not under a lot of pressure. Nobody would have thought, this was a failure if they lost to OKC, right? They lost their coach right before the playoffs.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of things that these guys would have they did not play under pressure, right? Because honestly, I think if you ask any Denver fan at the moment, they're gonna say we did well. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So that's why I don't think the players were under a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
But OKC players, I think they were under pressure, right? Under a lot of pressure because their fans expected a lot from them.
Exactly.
The entire basketball fans expected a lot from them.
They know they're the best team in the league.
Exactly. So, but you go and you performed in that level in Game 7. I think that was pretty impressive, to be honest.
Yeah, it's good for team morale and fan morale.
So that makes me think they're not gonna choke, but you never know. And again, we're all just talking about assuming everybody remains healthy.
Yeah, assuming everybody's healthy. Like, obviously, I don't even think Minnesota would be in this spot had Steph not got injured, for example. Yeah. I really think Warriors would have been in the conference finals.
Exactly.
Yeah. And speaking of Minnesota, I also think if Minnesota were to advance, I think a Minnesota-New York final would also be interesting, considering that both of those teams made huge moves in the offseason with each other. Knicks gave Julius Randle and that DiVincenzo guy to Minnesota, and then New York City got Karl Anthony Towns. So I feel like that would be interesting, and it would kind of go down as like a win-win trade if those teams, faced off in the finals together. I just thought that would be kind of a fun matchup. Either way, it would be a fun matchup.
Minnesota is my least favorite team amongst those 4 teams. So I honestly, if Minnesota goes to the final, I don't think I'm gonna even watch the NBA final.
Yeah, and
I just don't like them, especially since they. With Lakers. So.
Yeah, I think there's a pretty, obvious reason why we don't like them as much. They eliminated Lakers, but yeah, either way, I think it should make for a good final.
Exciting. I'm joking about Minnesota, but NBA final is something that I would never miss, and it's exciting. Either way, it's just gonna be exciting.
Yeah,
I think either matchup, honestly, it's gonna be an exciting. As I said, even OKC going there being a huge favorite. I think that at least it will go to game 6.
Oh yeah.
So we may have actually a 7-game NBA final series this year, unlike last year, which was like 5.
Oh yeah, which hasn't happened. I think the past 2 finals have been in 5 games, which is boring.
We definitely won. That's 7-game series for sure.
Exactly. I even think Indiana. I mean, Indiana is really unexpected. Indiana has proved a lot of people wrong.
Good.
Yeah, they've proved a lot of people wrong. They've they've proved that they could actually contend. Like, they're not a bunch of jokes.
No, they could.
I thought they were a bunch of jokes. I'll admit it. I thought they were a bunch of jokes, but they have really proved a lot of people wrong.
I think New York will beat them.
I think so too, but you never know.
New York, and I'll finish them in game 6.
Yeah. And kind of shifting out of the NBA. Also, what recently happened was the NFL schedule release. Obviously, we talked about the NFL in our last podcast, and we know my dad's a Niners fan. And obviously, with their, arguably easy schedule, and what do you think about the games?
Schedule.
Yeah.
It's the easiest to schedule. And again,
what do you think about the schedule
based on like pretty much the performance last year, right? You're like. Atlanta Falcons, right, is a team, as an example, that NFL seems to believe in at the moment, right? Why? Because they are giving them 5 primetime games.
I was really surprised by that. I don't know why they have that many
Niners
primetime
too,
games.
right? Niners are coming from a 6-1 season, and they're still getting 5 primetime games, right? So that tells you NFL actually believes in Niners, because primetime games are like big deals.
Yeah, so same thing with Cowboys. Cowboys had a 7-win season. They're getting
Cowboys
6.
always get it, like, because of a different reason. To
Niners
be honest.
do too, I have noticed, though. Niners have
because those are like really
big markets.
Popular big market teams, like Chiefs as an example and stuff like that. But I still think it's really like, Niners could have got 3 this year or something like that. Last year they had 6. This year they're still giving them 5. That's pretty impressive. But like, for example, Saints are not getting any, right?
Yeah.
I think Titans are not getting any. Right?
Deservedly so.
There are 3 teams that are not getting any, because NFL is saying that, we don't believe in you guys, for this season, you got to prove yourself. So what I'm trying to say is, like Atlanta Falcons, right? Like, even though they did not have the greatest season like last year, right? But and because of that, they are actually one of the teams that are gonna, that Niners will play right this season, and because of their past year performance, they believe that Niners have an easy schedule, right? Playing teams like Atlanta Falcons because of their past year, performance. But
Yeah.
based on their draft, based on the potential that they have, and based on their young quarterback that is going to start this season and stuff like that, right? Atlanta Falcons could make some noise, and that is not going to be an easy game for the Niners.
Yeah, especially they're in an easy division.
Yeah, and then Niners could face multiple of Atlanta Falcons, right? That the teams that were not good last year, right? Everybody thinks that they are not going to be good, but then all of a sudden, boom, like they are going to be great teams.
Yeah.
Like, for example, Panthers, nobody really believes that Panthers are going to be competing for championship or something like that, or Super Bowl this year. But everybody believes that Panthers are going to be a much better team this year than last year.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Same thing with Patriots as well. Patriots,
Yeah.
people believe in Patriots a lot more because they got Stephon Diggs in the offseason, and they also upped their offensive line game and their weapons.
So the bottom line is, I admit that Niners going into the season, they probably have the easiest schedule, right? Compared to teams like Giants, which is like unbelievable.
Oh
Like
yeah,
when you look
they have
at
the hardest ranked
Giants,
schedule.
unbelievable, right? I would not. Niners coming from a 6-11 season, with like in a rebuild mode and stuff like that, losing so many talents, right? Adding a lot of young players that we don't know exactly how they're gonna be in a pro football level. I'm pretty happy that Niners just happen to have an easy schedule that would allow them actually, to even make the playoffs, to win the division, because Rams, they do not have an easy schedule, right? Even though they are a better team than the Niners this year, but Niners could surprisingly actually win the division.
Oh yeah,
and make the playoffs.
Yeah.
And again, I said it last time, I don't think Niners are gonna be like a Super Bowl contender this year, but with 11 picks next year, when they could actually fill all the holes and weaknesses and the weak points and stuff like that, I think 2026 will be the Niner year.
Yeah, I mean that there's very strong points supporting that, and I will see. I mean, I really think they could also be a dark horse contender for winning the conference, for getting the 1 seed. I think with how easy their schedule is, and with how hard teams like the Eagles and Cowboys schedule are.
Eagles have a pretty hard schedule, but this year, actually, I was listening to Adam Schefter's podcast earlier today. He was making an interesting point. He was like, NFL is really trying to break the families this year, because when you really look at the games on Thanksgiving and Christmas Day, they are amazing games.
Oh, they're incredible games.
So
Chiefs,
we have
Cowboys
never
on Thanksgiving.
had such good games on like these holidays.
Yeah.
We just happen to have maybe 1 or 2 or something like that. Sometimes none, in like past years. But like this year, like every single game is amazing.
I know. I mean,
So
who would have thought?
I'm really looking forward to that.
I would have never thought that on Thanksgiving games typically, at least from my experience of watching football, have not really been the best games. It'll be a game like Cowboys Giants or something where you already know like one team is gonna blow out the other.
Yeah.
But this year we have Cowboys Chiefs.
Cowboys Chiefs was a really nice touch. I
Yeah,
love
Cowboys
that.
Chiefs, and then Ravens Bengals as well
That's
to cap off the
amazing.
night as well.
That's an amazing.
I really
I
couldn't
love
ask
that.
for more on Thanksgiving.
I love it.
Yeah.
A very good, honestly, season opener. I think Eagles, Cowboys was
A classic
pretty
rivalry.
awesome. No, this is gonna be an interesting, very fun season. I'm really looking forward.
Yeah, and then the first Sunday night football of the year is Bills and Ravens, which is perfect for Sunday night football. and then the Friday game in Brazil, because now they're doing every NFL opener has a Friday game too now, so
There's
that's
gonna
Chargers
be
Chiefs.
12 international games, I think, this year.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's one in Madrid for the
And
first time.
is it Minnesota that is playing 2 back-to-back international games?
They are, yeah.
One in
Minnesota's in 2
Dublin,
games.
and then the week after they go to London.
Yeah.
I mean, they're pretty close to one another, but these guys are gonna be spending like a couple of weeks, out of the country.
Oh yeah.
And both are considered Vikings home games. So
Oh, so they're kind of at a disadvantage in a way.
so it's
Yeah.
kind of like, and Jaguars, I think, as usual, like they're going back to Europe.
Yeah.
They're trying to just like increase their fan base over there.
Yeah.
And we're going to the Niners home opener, right?
Oh yeah, in week 3 versus Cardinals.
Versus Cardinals, I'm very excited about that.
Yeah,
Like,
my dad
good
always wants to go to
seats.
the home opener.
And then yep. I want to make that a tradition that we would always go to the home opener. And I'm
Yeah.
gonna turn you into a Niner fan.
That's not happening.
That's
What
happening,
will
so-
be happening though is for the Thanksgiving and Christmas games, we will not be spending time with our families. So
I know we're gonna
Yeah.
be spending time with our TV.
yeah, on the couch with our turkey. Yeah.
No, good one. Good discussions. Definitely look forward to that. Maybe we'll talk. Maybe right before or after the NBA finals. Definitely after, because I really want to call out like predictions and stuff like that and see how accurate.
Yeah, exactly. Because
Yeah.
that'll be interesting looking back on this
Yeah, exactly.
to see how horribly wrong we were.
I know.
Yeah.
I just happen to be wrong these days, so
Yeah.
I'll see. I'll see
Yeah.
if that changes.
All right. Thank you guys so much for watching. See you guys in the next one.
Thank you all.
Bye.
See you next time.